Imagine standing at the pinnacle of success, with the world at your feet, only to realize that the very thing you sacrificed everything for has left you hollow, broken, and alone. This is the story of a man who had it all: fame, fortune, and the adoration of millions, but lost the one thing that truly mattered: his family. Today, we dive into a tale so gripping, so emotionally charged, that it will make you question the price of ambition and the true meaning of redemption. This is not just a story about fame and failure. It's a story about love, loss, and the unbreakable bonds that tie us to the people we call family. By the end of this video, you'll get the answers you've been searching for, answers that will leave you reflecting on your own life and the choices you've made. So, buckle up, because this journey is about to take you on an emotional roller coaster you won't soon forget. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to achieve your wildest dreams, only to realize that the cost was too high? This is the haunting reality for our protagonist, a man who once believed that fame and fortune were the ultimate goals in life. He climbed the ladder of success, step by step, leaving behind everything that once grounded him: his wife, his children, and the simple joys of family life. For years, he convinced himself that his sacrifices were worth it, that the applause of strangers could fill the void left by the absence of his loved ones. But deep down, in the quiet moments when the cameras were off and the crowds had dispersed, he felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him, a constant reminder of what he had lost. And then, just when he thought he had reached the point of no return, something extraordinary happened. His son, the child he had left behind in pursuit of his dreams, returned. But this was no happy reunion. It was a confrontation, a reckoning that would force him to face the consequences of his actions. The son he had abandoned was no longer the wide-eyed boy he remembered. He was a young man, hardened by years of neglect and betrayal. Their meeting was charged with emotion, a collision of past and present that would leave both of them forever changed. But what exactly happened during that fateful encounter? What words were exchanged, and what secrets were revealed? These are the questions that will keep you glued to your screen, eager to uncover the truth. As we delve deeper into this story, we'll explore the complex dynamics of family, the allure of fame, and the lengths to which people will go to achieve their dreams. We'll meet key characters who played pivotal roles in this man's journey: his estranged wife who struggled to rebuild her life after he left, his son who grew up feeling abandoned and unloved, and the man himself who must now confront the consequences of his choices. Each of these characters brings a unique perspective to the story, adding layers of depth and complexity that will keep you hooked from start to finish. But here's the thing: this isn't just a story about one man's downfall. It's a story that resonates with all of us, because at its core, it's about the universal desire for love, acceptance, and belonging. It's about the choices we make and the impact those choices have on the people we care about most. It's about the moments that define us, the moments that force us to confront who we really are and what we truly value. And it's about the possibility of redemption, the hope that no matter how far we've fallen, it's never too late to make things right. So, as we embark on this journey together, I want you to think about your own life. What are the things that matter most to you? What are you willing to sacrifice to achieve your dreams? And what would you do if you were given a second chance to make things right? These are the questions that will linger in your mind as we unravel the mystery of this man's life, a mystery that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end. But before we go any further, let me leave you with this. The moment his son walked back into his life, everything changed. The walls he had built around his heart began to crumble. And for the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had lost forever: hope. But hope can be a dangerous thing, especially when it comes with a price. And as we'll soon discover, the price of redemption is higher than anyone could have imagined. So stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you breathless, and the answers you've been waiting for are just around the corner. This introduction is designed to captivate your audience from the very first sentence, drawing them into the story with a compelling hook and a sense of mystery. While addressing the viewers directly and posing thought-provoking questions, it creates a personal connection that encourages them to keep watching. The tone is emotional and reflective, setting the stage for a story that explores deep, universal themes. The cliffhanger at the end ensures that viewers will be eager to see what happens next, keeping them engaged throughout the video. To truly understand the gravity of the moment when his son returned, we need to rewind the clock and step into the past, where this story began. Our protagonist, let's call him James, was once a man with humble beginnings. He grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, and dreams of fame and fortune felt like distant fantasies. But James was different. He had a fire in him, a relentless drive to prove himself to the world. He believed he was destined for greatness, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get there. His journey to the top wasn't easy. It was paved with sleepless nights, endless sacrifices, and a series of tough decisions that would ultimately define his legacy. But as he climbed higher, the people who had once been his foundation began to slip away, one by one. His wife, Sarah, stood by him in the early years, believing in his vision and supporting him through every setback. But as James's career took off, the distance between them grew. He was constantly on the road, chasing opportunities, while she was left behind to raise their son, Ethan, on her own. The cracks in their marriage began to show, and eventually, the weight of James's ambition became too much for their relationship to bear. Ethan, their only child, was just a boy when his father left. He didn't fully understand why his dad was never around, but he felt the absence deeply. As the years went by, Ethan grew up in the shadow of his father's fame, constantly reminded of the man who had chosen a life in the spotlight over being a present parent. He watched his mother struggle to make ends meet, working long hours to provide for them while James's face appeared on billboards and TV screens. The resentment simmered beneath the surface, growing stronger with each passing year. Ethan's childhood was marked by a sense of abandonment, a void that no amount of success or material wealth could fill. And yet, despite everything, there was a part of him that still longed for his father's approval, a desperate hope that one day James would come back and make things right. Meanwhile, James's life in the fast lane was everything he had dreamed of and more. He was living the high life, surrounded by adoring fans, influential friends, and endless opportunities. But beneath the glitz and glamour, there was an emptiness that he couldn't ignore. The louder the applause, the more he felt the silence in his heart. He tried to fill the void with work, with distractions, with anything that would keep him from facing the truth, that he had traded the love of his family for a life that felt increasingly hollow. There were moments late at night when he would allow himself to think about Sarah and Ethan, wondering how they were doing and if they ever thought about him. But those moments were fleeting, quickly buried under the weight of his ambition and the fear of confronting his mistakes. As the years went by, James's career began to plateau. The fame that had once felt exhilarating now felt suffocating, and the constant pressure to maintain his image took its toll. He found himself at a crossroads, forced to confront the choices he had made and the life he had built. It was during this time of reflection that he received the news that would change everything. Ethan, now a young man, wanted to see him. The message was brief, but it carried a weight that James couldn't ignore. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to reconnect with the son he had left behind. But he also felt a deep sense of dread, knowing that this meeting could either be the beginning of healing or the final nail in the coffin of their fractured relationship. The day of their reunion was charged with tension, a palpable sense of anticipation that hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. James arrived at the designated meeting place, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew that this moment would define the rest of his life. When Ethan walked in, James was struck by how much he had grown. The boy he remembered was gone, replaced by a young man who carried himself with a quiet strength and a steely resolve. Their eyes met, and in that moment, years of unspoken words and buried emotions came rushing to the surface. The conversation that followed was raw and unfiltered, a painful but necessary reckoning that forced both of them to confront the past and the choices that had led them to this point. But this was just the beginning. As James and Ethan began to navigate their complicated relationship, new layers of the story began to emerge. Sarah, who had spent years rebuilding her life without James, found herself drawn back into the orbit of the man who had once been her everything. Her perspective added another dimension to the narrative, revealing the sacrifices she had made and the strength it had taken to move on. Meanwhile, Ethan's journey of self-discovery brought its own set of challenges, as he struggled to reconcile his feelings of anger and abandonment with the desire to understand his father's side of the story. The more they delved into their shared history, the more they uncovered secrets and truths that had been buried for years, each revelation adding another piece to the puzzle. As the story unfolds, we see how the choices of one man ripple through the lives of those around him, leaving a trail of pain, regret, and unanswered questions. But amidst the turmoil, there is also a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption, for healing, and for a new beginning. The road ahead is far from easy, and the wounds of the past run deep. But as James, Sarah, and Ethan navigate the complexities of their relationships, they begin to realize that the bonds of family, though tested, are not easily broken. The question is, will they find a way to come together, or will the weight of their history pull them apart forever? The answers lie ahead in a story that is as much about the power of forgiveness as it is about the cost of ambition. And as we continue to unravel the layers of this emotional journey, one thing is certain: the stakes have never been higher. As James and Ethan began to navigate their fragile new dynamic, the tension between them was palpable. Every conversation felt like walking on a tightrope, with both men carefully choosing their words, afraid that one wrong move could send everything crashing down. James, desperate to make amends, tried to bridge the gap by sharing stories from his rise to fame, the struggles, the triumphs, and the moments of doubt that no one else had seen. But Ethan wasn't ready to forgive. For him, the wounds were still too fresh, the scars too deep. He listened, but his responses were guarded, his emotions locked behind a wall of resentment. It was clear that rebuilding their relationship would take more than just words. It would take time, effort, and a willingness to confront the pain they had both been avoiding for so long. Just as it seemed like they were making tentative progress, an unexpected twist threw everything into chaos. One evening, as James and Ethan sat in James's sprawling but eerily empty mansion, a knock at the door interrupted their strained conversation. Standing on the doorstep was a woman James hadn't seen in years, a face from his past that brought with it a flood of memories and a secret he had buried long ago. Her name was Clara, and she had been a part of James's life during the early days of his career, a time when he was still figuring out who he was and what he wanted. Claire's arrival was like a bombshell, shattering the fragile peace James and Ethan had been trying to build. She had news that would change everything. Claire revealed that she and James had a daughter together, a child he had never known about. Her name was Lily, and she was now a teenager, living with Claire but struggling with her own questions about her father's absence. The revelation hit James like a tidal wave, leaving him reeling. He had spent years grappling with the guilt of abandoning Ethan, and now he was faced with the reality that he had another child, a child who had grown up without him. For Ethan, the news was a double blow. Not only had his father left him, but he had also kept the existence of a half-sister a secret. The betrayal cut deep, reigniting the anger and hurt he had been trying to suppress. The dynamic between James and Ethan, already fragile, now teetered on the edge of collapse. But amidst the chaos, there was also a glimmer of something else, a chance for James to right his wrongs, not just with Ethan but with Lily as well. The question was, would he be able to handle the weight of this new responsibility, or would it crush him under the pressure? As the story unfolded, the subplots began to intertwine, adding layers of complexity to the narrative. Sarah, who had been trying to stay out of James's life, found herself drawn back into the fray when she learned about Lily. Her initial reaction was one of shock and anger, but as she processed the news, she began to see an opportunity not just for James, but for Ethan as well. She reached out to Clara, offering her support and suggesting that they work together to help their children navigate the complicated web of emotions they were all feeling. Meanwhile, Ethan, still grappling with his own feelings of abandonment, found himself unexpectedly protective of Lily. Despite his anger toward James, he couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility toward the sister he had just discovered. Their first meeting was awkward and tense, but there was an unspoken understanding between them, a shared sense of loss and a desire to find their place in a family that had been fractured for so long. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure was mounting. James, now faced with the reality of two children who needed him, was forced to confront the consequences of his choices in a way he never had before. He knew that this was his last chance to make things right, but the road ahead was fraught with challenges. Would he be able to earn the forgiveness of his children, or would his past mistakes prove too much to overcome? And what about Clara and Sarah, two women who had been hurt by his actions but were now playing pivotal roles in the lives of their children? The tension between them was undeniable, but so was their shared commitment to helping Ethan and Lily find closure. As the story hurtled toward its climax, the questions multiplied. Would James be able to rebuild the relationships he had broken, or would the weight of his past prove too heavy to bear? Could Ethan and Lily find a way to move forward, or would the scars of their father's absence define their lives forever? And what about Sarah and Clara, two women who had every reason to hate James but were now united by their love for their children? The answers were still out of reach, but one thing was certain: the journey ahead would be filled with heartbreak, hope, and the possibility of redemption. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change their lives forever, and the only way to find out what happened next was to keep watching. The story was far from over, and the twists and turns were just beginning. The tension in James's life reached a boiling point as he found himself standing at the center of a storm he had created. With Ethan's anger simmering just beneath the surface and Lily's tentative curiosity about the father she had never known, James knew he had to act quickly to prevent everything from falling apart. He called a family meeting, inviting Sarah, Clara, Ethan, and Lily to his home, a place that had once been a symbol of his success, but now felt like a prison of his own making. The air was thick with unresolved emotions as they gathered in the living room, each person carrying their own baggage and their own hopes for what this meeting might bring. James began by speaking from the heart, something he hadn't done in years. He admitted his mistakes, his selfishness, and the pain he had caused. He didn't try to justify his actions or make excuses. Instead, he took full responsibility for the choices that had torn his family apart. It was a raw and vulnerable moment, one that left everyone in the room stunned. Ethan, who had spent years building walls around his heart, found himself caught off guard by his father's honesty. He had expected more excuses, more empty promises, but what he got was something entirely different: a man who was finally willing to face the consequences of his actions. For the first time, Ethan saw a glimmer of the father he had once idolized, the man who had been buried under layers of fame and ambition. Lily, too, was moved by James's words. She had grown up without a father, and while she had always wondered about him, she had never expected him to acknowledge her existence, let alone apologize for his absence. The room was silent as James finished speaking, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. It was a moment of reckoning, a turning point that would determine whether this fractured family could find a way to heal. But just as it seemed like they might be able to move forward, an unexpected twist shook the foundation of everything they had been working toward. Clara, who had been quietly listening to James's apology, suddenly revealed a secret of her own. She confessed that Lily wasn't James's biological daughter. The revelation was like a thunderclap, leaving everyone in the room speechless. Clara explained that she had been in a relationship with someone else when she and James were together, and she had never been sure who Lily's father was. She had kept the truth hidden all these years, afraid of the fallout and unsure of how to navigate the complicated emotions involved. The news was a shock to everyone, but especially to Lily, who had just begun to form a connection with James. Her world was turned upside down, and she struggled to process what this meant for her identity and her place in the family. James, however, surprised everyone with his response. Instead of pulling away or expressing anger, he told Lily that it didn't matter whether they shared DNA or not. What mattered was the bond they were beginning to build, the connection that had formed in spite of the lies and the secrets. He promised to be there for her, not out of obligation, but because he wanted to be. It was a moment of profound clarity, a reminder that family isn't just about blood, it's about love, commitment, and the choices we make to show up for one another. Lily, tears streaming down her face, nodded silently, her heart full of conflicting emotions, but also a newfound sense of hope. As the dust settled, the family began to find their way forward. Ethan, inspired by his father's willingness to change, started to let go of some of the anger he had been carrying. He realized that holding on to his resentment was only hurting him, and he began to open up to the possibility of rebuilding his relationship with James. Sarah and Clara, though still wary of each other, found common ground in their shared love for their children. They began to work together, creating a support system that allowed Ethan and Lily to navigate their complicated emotions in a safe and loving environment. James, for his part, committed himself to being a better father, not just in words, but in actions. He started attending therapy, working through the issues that had driven him to prioritize fame over family, and making a conscious effort to be present in his children's lives. The story ended with a sense of closure, but also with the understanding that healing is a journey, not a destination. James, Ethan, Lily, Sarah, and Clara had taken the first steps toward rebuilding their family, but there was still work to be done. The scars of the past would always be there, but they no longer defined them. Instead, they served as a reminder of how far they had come and how much they had grown. As the camera panned out, showing the family sitting together, laughing and talking, the audience was left with a powerful message that no matter how broken things may seem, it's never too late to make things right. The bonds of family, though tested, are resilient, and with love, honesty, and a willingness to change, even the deepest wounds can begin to heal. And so, the story of James and his family came to an end, not with a perfect happily ever after, but with a sense of hope and the promise of a brighter future.